Now that we've managed to move this object across the screen, so we've got two keyframes on it, one on frame 1, one on frame 24, so it's moving across the screen smoothly. We're going to look at how it's moving across the screen. So right now what we would call this is linear motion. Linear meaning that it is moving at the same rate as it travels across the screen. It's not slowing down, it's not speeding up or ease in or ease out if you're familiar with traditional animation verbiage. So this is a linear motion. And what we want to do is we want to be able to animate this speeding up or slowing down as it moves. Okay, so let me show you the primitive way that we would try to do that. First, I'm going to create a new object, polygon primitive sphere. Okay, so same as our first, frame 1. I'm just going to drag it up underneath my original copy here, and I'm going to key translate Z, key selected, so just like our original object. I'm going to move to frame 24, and remember our value for that was -17, so that's why we made it a nice round number so that we can remember it. So I'm going to put in -17, and since I know I'm going to do this a couple more times, I'm just going to select and copy that number so that I can paste it in next time. I'll hit enter, and before I do anything, I have to key this channel on frame 24 so that both of these should now move together. Okay, but what I really want to do is I want to be able to make this second object slow down towards the end of this motion. Okay, now slowing down means that the frame spacing is going to be closer together at the end of this motion as opposed to the beginning. If we want things to go faster, the spacing between each individual frame is going to be widened. So for instance, here's this gap here we have between these two frames. The top sphere is going to move in that exact same increment for every single step. But our bottom ball, if we wanted it to be able to slow down at the end and be faster at the beginning, would have to have a slightly, or maybe even significantly wider spacing at the beginning here. Notice that if I don't key selected and I move this, it just snaps back to what it was before. Okay, and at the end here, it would have to have a smaller spacing, a much smaller spacing, something like that much. That might not be very noticeable to the naked eye, but when it moves in a pattern, it's going to be very noticeable. Again, I'm not going to set that keyframe, and it'll just snap back to its original position until I start setting keyframes. So this is not going to be utilizing what the program is especially good for, which is doing these minute changes through mathematics or through the graph editor. We're going to try to do this by hand, okay, in more of a traditional way. So here I am at frame 12. Frame 12 is halfway exactly in between frame 1 and frame 24, and I'm going to try to make it so that this ball is slower on the ending part of its movement and faster in the beginning. And how I'm going to do that is I'm just going to push it over to this side so that it travels across more space at the beginning and less space at the end. And I'm going to key select it. Okay? If we just play back that change alone, the effect is already somewhat visible. Now, it's not an elegant solution to this problem. It's a very shoddy solution, but we can improve upon that as we go. Okay, this might seem to be an inferior approach for all situations in Maya because we do have the graph editor, but sometimes there is a situation where you really should do these adjustments by hand, and in this case, this methodology can really help, and it's traditional animation methodology. So now I'm going to go in between frame 12 and frame 24, directly in between those two positions. Okay, this is where the object is, and I know it's traveling linearly between 12 and 24 now at a different speed, but it's still traveling linearly, so I'm going to do the same thing. On frame 18, which should be directly in between these two positions, I'm going to adjust this to the right slightly so that this spacing between 18 and 12 is faster, and this spacing between 18 and 24 is slower. Okay, it's traveling across less distance. I'm going to key selected again, and we're going to play again. So now it's adjusting its speed twice, once at frame 12 and once at frame 18 before it comes to a stop at frame 24. And our overall effect is slightly smoother stopping. Okay, I'm going to do it again between 18 and 24. Frame 21 is in between those two numbers. I'm going to adjust this towards the ending position as close as I dare without crossing over it. If I cross over it, we'll get a yo-yo effect, which is no good. I'm going to key selected, and we're going to play this again. Now we're getting an even smoother stopping. Okay, and we can keep doing this, breaking down the motion into smaller and smaller chunks. In fact, let's go ahead and do this for the very last frame. I don't have a mathematics center between 21 and 24 necessarily, so I'm just going to use 23, and I'm going to adjust it very, very close, but not quite touching that line, so not quite -17. And I'll go ahead and key selected, and so we should get a very, very smooth stop. Okay. So you can see the difference as they play, that the top one is moving at a steady pace. The bottom one, although they both start at the very same point and they both end at the very same point at the very same time, the motion is very different. For the bottom ball, it's quick at the beginning and slow towards the end, and for the top ball, it moves evenly across the stage.